Dette er en bok som heter Game Changer. Den er skrevet av Peter Moore, som var CEO i Liverpool FC mellom 2017 og 2020, altså de beste årene i moderne tid i klubben i vårt hjerte. Jeg har tatt en prat med Peter Moore om både årene hans i Liverpool og karrieren hans før det. Han flyttet til USA som ganske ung mann, og har hatt en imponerende karriere i store selskaper som Reebok, EA og Microsoft. Så jeg håper dere koser dere med denne praten.
I've drummed it into our players that they are privileged to play for you.
And the story is, of course, about you and your incredible career. Most of our readers and members and listeners will recognize you as the CEO of Liverpool FC during at least the best time in my lifetime supporting Liverpool FC, but it started way before that. It's a really long story how you got to Liverpool FC. You are a Scouser, of course, but you moved to the States at a young age, and that's where you started your career.
Well, yeah, although I was a PE teacher in Britain. I mean, that's what I am. I'm a PE teacher. That's all that's all I'm qualified to be fundamentally. But my first game at Anfield, my dad took me, was November in 1959, and we played Leyton Orient. We beat them 4-3, and I was hooked. And so whatever that is, 66 years ago now. So it's it has been a lifelong love affair with the club, and I moved to America in the 70s. I was coaching soccer and coming over for summers, and fell in love with the United States during that time. And Britain was tough during those days. My dad had moved us to Wrexham when I was a kid, and when I was 10, and that's kind of where my family is. So it's both Liverpool and Wrexham. So it's an interesting football story on both sides, very different, but and I was very lucky to be able to arrive in America, recognize what I call in the book and in my TED talk, the power of Scouseness, and kind of leverage that all the way along, and still do, of who I am, of who we are as Liverpudlians, our unique personality, and how do you put that to work for you, to bring your career along, bring your professional and personal lives along. And so, I'd urge everybody, watch the TED Talk if you're interested at all. And I recorded it that morning when we played Man City in the afternoon. I always remember this. And, it was a pretty hectic day, but a great day. So, it's been such a long journey, but one that I've never forgotten my roots. And I think that's the important lesson that you have is, for example, you as a Norwegian. I mean, I think of Norwegians, Scandinavians in general, as hardy, as great work ethic, as resilient people that are different than Liverpudlians, a little more understated, and so, but you've got these attributes that if you recognize them and you put them to work for you, hold you in good stead for your entire life. And that's what I've always done, being a Liverpudlian.
And I think in your book, you write about how you mix that with the American dream. And that's how you got into your line of work, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, look, you find when you arrive, and I've been here 45 years now, you arrive, and for some weird reason, Americans think a British accent is educated and you're smart, and sometimes nothing could be further from the truth. But I played up my Liverpool accent, got my British accent is pretty much gone. I sound to an American, I sound British still, even though I've been gone, like I say, 40 odd years. But when I go back home to Liverpool or to Wrexham, I sound very American to them. So you play, as I should do. I haven't been here since the early 80s, so, but you put it to work for you. And I think that's where you're at. But I like to think I'm bilingual. My American wife came to Liverpool with me when I went over in 2017, and I realized how much translating I had to do in the early days of words Liverpudlians use, words Brits use, the way sentences are formed. And you realize there's the old joke. It's two nations separated by a common language is the old joke about Britain and the United States, but it's true. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of words an American go, I have no idea what you're talking about. So you have to translate, and then you add Liverpool on top of that, which is its own language. It was funny. I mean, and then Debbie, my wife, really settled in. She got to understand what people meant, and fell in love with Liverpool and the people of Liverpool, as everybody does.
So your roots have been important to the whole way through.
Yeah.
And your career in America, working for Reebok, Sega, EA for decades, I think.
Yeah. I came over to coach to Long Beach, California, and I realized pretty quick, and to play, which I did, but I realized pretty quickly I needed a real job. I was an immigrant. It was a tough couple of years, and you'll read about it in the book. And by 1983, my then wife and I had a baby. And so that really gives you a sense of responsibility and just goofing off coaching. And I had to go to school at night, to university, to do my master's degree. Not that I needed one, but I needed to stay legal in the country. And then I got a real job selling soccer shoes, which taught me so much. A great company called Patrick that were great shoes during that period, and had actually big Scandinavian linkage with the Laudrup brothers, maybe before your time, but Michael Laudrup in particular. Michel Platini, who more famously became, president of UEFA. Kevin Keegan, the great Liverpool number 7. These were all Reebok, Patrick endorsers. And it taught me a lot about myself, selling. I'm a teacher. I've never sold anything, and this is 15 years before the internet. So you've got a map book. There's no sat nav, there's no GPS, and you just go door to door and figure out where the sporting goods store is, and you knock on the door, and again, you leverage your Scouserness, your Liverpudlianness of what we call in English gift of the gab, which is the ability to talk to anybody about anything, and your personality, upbeat, cheerful. I think I liked it, warm. I like to think that we Liverpudlians are that way. A lot to say for ourselves, and that helped me enormously. And I got spotted by Reebok after 11 years of Patrick. Moved to Boston, and very quickly as director of soccer. Signed another great players, Dennis Bergkamp, Ryan Giggs, Andy Cole, great players. And really got that business going and worked my way up to head of global sports product marketing at Reebok. And then big career, but Reebok, we were getting our rear ends kicked by Nike, and it just was a difficult time. And by then I'm 44 years of age, got 3 kids, and it's like, I'm like, Reebok says, everybody's being let go. We're getting killed. And so career change. And I get a call from my executive recruiter and said, what do you know about video games? Nothing. Well, Sega's looking for a head of marketing. And in those days, Jens, it was still very much boys in their bedrooms. Video games had not evolved to what they are today. The graphics weren't there. The internet hadn't really kicked in. And the power of the machines wasn't delivering the experience that we're so used to today with Xboxes and PlayStations and Switches. But I took the leap, moved back to San Francisco, and learned very quickly about the video game industry. And, long story short, very quickly became president of Sega. Spent 5 years, launched the Dreamcast console there, and then got spotted by Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer and moved up to Microsoft in Seattle. And was head of Xbox for 5 years. And then finally went back to San Francisco when I was recruited to be president EA Sports and everything that came with that, which was, I think ultimately my sports background, my video game background came together perfectly in that role, we started to rebuild the FIFA franchise, the game that really defined EA in those days. And was there and became chief operating officer until one day I get a call from an executive recruiter again. This is in the summer of 2016. And she says, would you ever move back to the UK? And I always remember looking out the window and beautiful California day and things were going great at EA. And I said, heck no. Yeah, no. Not in the least bit interested in heading back. I've been gone a long time. I'm much more American than I am British now. And I'm doing very well in my job. And then she said, what if it was to be CEO of Liverpool Football Club? So pause. And Fenway Sports Group, as you know, was looking for a CEO. My predecessor, Ian Eyre, had graciously given them a 1-year kind of notice period, which allowed them to do a global search. And my girlfriend then, now my wife, Debbie, and she was working for Fitbit, the fitness watch company. I was obviously working for EA, and we just took that plunge and said, okay, let's go. What do I know about running a football club? But it's like anything. It's business, it's people. And I had this advantage of being a Liverpudlian, I guess. And so we moved back, we quit our jobs, very emotionally, it was difficult. We have 6 kids between us, all pretty much adults, but kind of left them behind, brought one over to Liverpool to go to school in Liverpool. And the rest, as they say, is history. So that's kind of how it all worked. And I had an amazing, what ended up with the COVID season being 3.5 years at Liverpool before we went back and came back to the United States.
But from what I understand, it wasn't a complete coincidence that they called you because, as you said, you had never run a football club, but of course your heritage from Liverpool, and I think you had met some of the guys from FSG before as well.
Yeah, I was very involved with the club, even as an outsider. I had helped them, got to know Billy Hogan, who became my successor, and interestingly, flew over to London to head up and moderate a sponsor session in London the day that Jürgen Klopp was hired. So I met him, shook his hand, talked to him. I'm still an EA employee, no thoughts to being a Liverpool employee. This was the year before. But yeah, and so the club, they were aware of me, and I think that they saw in me somebody, a Liverpudlian that could maybe, maintain the roots to the city and to the supporter base, because they're living in Boston, Massachusetts, and they're not coming over every week for the games. And secondly, with a fresh view on technology and fan engagement, certainly something that I'd learned in my video game days of managing that community. And somebody maybe with a fresh outlook of how the club should be run, that could be the face of the club, for them. And, in the end, when I left and came back to the States and started to write the book, I didn't have much of a job description. The role was changing from the traditional football CEO was very involved with the players and the manager and transfers and loans. And that wasn't my job. So I had to, figure out what was needed, what was required, where I would add most value. And it ended up, ironically, being 4 C's. It was community was critical, building that link to the community, the fan base, civic relationships. As you know, Liverpool on a home weekend, there's thousands. Planes flying in from Oslo, Helsinki, Copenhagen, Stockholm, all day long. And from the perspective of figuring out, so that civic relationship was very important with the mayor and the chief of police. Obviously culture within the club and figuring out who we are and what our goals were, because there's 800 full-time employees for Liverpool Football Club. And there's 2,500 employees, casual employees, as we call them, on game day. So rebuilding that culture to make everybody aware of what we need to do as a team was critical. And then, of course, the commercial side of the business, we needed to compete, at the highest level commercially by what I'll call the virtuous cycle of football, which is make money, buy great players win you more games. When you start winning more games and ultimately trophies, big sponsors want to be a part of you who write you even bigger checks. And those bigger checks put even better players on the field. So all the money, to FSG's credit, was always reinvested back onto the pitch. And, so that element of it, the commercial element of it, was very important as well. So those were the 4 C's. It was community, civic, culture, and commercial. And that's where I spent my time as the CEO.
Was it difficult for you being a lifelong supporter, keeping your hands off the kind of football stuff?
Not really. Well, it's a great question, because in the end, being a supporter, is that a plus or a minus? Are your decisions clouded by being a supporter? If you were, as Billy is, an American that didn't grow up a Liverpool supporter, I mean, certainly is now, but it's hard not to be emotionally involved. And what you learn running a football club at the highest level is every week is emotional highs and sometimes lows. You're on a roll. And I was very fortunate. The 3 full seasons that I was there, including COVID, we were amazing, and I never saw Liverpool lose a Premier League game at Anfield in those 3 years, which is an amazing statistic. And, once we got going, once I started to figure out where I was at, I realized what my role was, to be the face of the club. But yeah, there was always that little question mark. Maybe ownership had, is he too close to the fans? Because I engaged with the fans, and they were never. You read this in the book. They were never that thrilled that I engaged with the fans on social media, that I thanked them for going to away games, and they just felt that was probably unstatesmanlike and unpresidential. This is a lesson I'd learned at EA, to engage with our fans in video games, gamers, and show the human face. I also felt that with absentee owners that weren't coming over every week, that somebody needed to be the face of the club, not just at a kind of corporate level, but at a human level. And rightly or wrongly, I felt that was the way to do it. And I reference in the book, a silly thing I did that I still think of today. In the season we were winning the league, Norwich City beats Man City out of nowhere, and you start feeling there's cracks in Man City, and this is our year. Let's not forget, we'd missed the league title by 1 point, the previous season, and every point was critical. And I tweeted a canary, which is the symbol of Norwich City. And I took it down straight away. I mean, I'll never forget this. I'm watching it, and within 20 seconds, there's 3,000 likes. And I thought, oh boy. And I immediately deleted it. At the same time, I'm getting a WhatsApp from Boston saying, take that down. And they were right. That was silly of me. And it was, but the fan in me, that one moment, the fan in me, and this understanding and realization that, man, this could be finally our year. We never won the Premier League, as you know. And as it so happens, it was our year. So it was, that was silly. But overall, I would probably still do what I did, which is engage with fans. I'm working and living in Liverpool. I'm walking the streets. There's some incidents that I reference in the book to that, not all good, but I felt that I needed to be present and accessible, and the face of a club, and that's what I did. And I look back with pride for what I did and what we were able to achieve during those 3 seasons.
And from what I think you're right as well. You saw that as a strength in your job as well, the connection. And I think as the supporters would like someone with that important job to really care about the club as well. So I think kind of a difficult balance.
Look, and I say this all the time when I go back and people recognize me, and some people still do. and they'll stop me and they're not saying, oh, we won the Premier League, on your watch, or we won the Champions League. We were champions of everything everywhere. No, they'll say, you made me feel closer to my club. And I think that's what I needed. The benefits of having a fan base, a supporter base that feels closer to the club are immeasurable. I mean, it's long term, but if it makes you feel that your football club is part of who you are, in commercial terms, the lifetime value of you as a supporter in merchandise and trips, if you can get to go to Anfield, and subscriptions for this and all of that, the lifetime value of a fan is immense. But it's not something that you measure tomorrow or next week. You measure over that lifetime. And we're very lucky to be this massive global football club that has such a great platform of stories and legends and it's truly global, one of the few truly global football clubs. And, in the end, I tried to encapsulate who we are as a football club. And I remember being at home one night and trying to write a strategic document for the employees, and the words local heart, global pulse came to me. And that's really who we are and what we are. We have this massive local heart of Anfield and Bill Shankly and Bob Paisley and Dalglish and Keegan and Ian St. John. You go all the way back, and You'll Never Walk Alone. The people of Liverpool, all of our success in the 70s and 80s, and you leverage that. You stand on that and you put it to work for you in I guess crash commercial terms, but very few clubs have got. And tragedy, obviously, Heysel and Hillsborough, all of that comes together in all of this. And so as a football club, we're blessed. We never lose sight of who we were. And we never lose sight of our relationship and our responsibilities to our fan base to bring them joy. Like I say, I followed the club for 65 years, and there's been a lot of rough periods, and we've just been through one. And I think hopefully we're emerging right now, but I've seen plenty of those. When I went to watch that game in November of 1959, we were a mediocre second division team, and Everton was the team, and the following month, December 59, we hire the manager, Bill Shankly, who changes everything.
And as you came into the club, it was on the rise under FSG's leadership and, of course, Jürgen Klopp. What was it like taking part and having such an important role during those, as you said, 3 years from when you started until the Premier League title?
Yeah, I mean, I remember the first game I went to, I wasn't even officially, the first game I went to once we landed in Liverpool and we found somewhere to live. It was the last game of the season. We're playing Middlesbrough and we're trying to get into the Champions League. I mean, and we needed to win that day to get into the Champions League, which we did. I remember Gini Wijnaldum scoring, and that was relief. And I also remember our first game in Champions League was Hoffenheim, and I'm thinking, these guys haven't lost at home, and so it shows you how far we came very quickly in that kind of first season. We end up in Kiev, and obviously that didn't go well, but we said we'll be back the following year, and we were in Madrid, so it was a roller coaster ride, and you could feel it, not just with the club, and not just at Anfield, in the city. The expectations started to rise. We, from a league perspective, we went to Wembley and played Spurs and got hammered, I think 4-1, and Harry Kane tortured Dejan Lovren. And I remember from that game, and that was a bad game. And that was, you'll read about it, that night I was foolish enough to walk around Liverpool to get something to eat, still in my club suit and tie, coming back from London, and got jumped and punched. And serves me right for being stupid enough to walk around after a bad defeat. But I remember after that game, it almost felt like we never lost. That game was a shock to the system, and we were magnificent after that. So, but when you're in it, Jens, you don't really realize what magic it is, and from the perspective of almost like unprecedented, which it was, and some of the numbers we were putting up, and what a team. It was Salah, Firmino, Mane up front there, and you've got your kind of engine rooms of Henderson and Milner and Wijnaldum, and obviously, eventually you get Van Dijk and Alisson, and you've got young Trent and you got Robbo, and you think of that team coming together as it did. I don't think you realize it in the moment of what a magical time that was. And you look back on it now and the football we played, heavy metal football, whatever you want to call it, the Gegenpress, and some of those moments. And I talk about it in the book, and I focus on the Barcelona game for an entire chapter in the book. But, that you look back and you smile. And as I always did after that night versus Barcelona at Anfield, once the adrenaline had worn off and I went home, I had to watch the game over again on television, which I'd recorded it, just to make sure that really happened, that we really beat them 4-0. A great Barcelona team. And so I think, reflecting on it, I was very fortunate to be there during that period. Very fortunate, I think, to be able to add, from my perspective, some value. And very fortunate that I took the risk to quit a great job, as did my wife, to go and money couldn't buy what we experienced and the memories that we have to this day of that time. And she fully engulfed herself in the culture of Liverpool and its people, and was very important in helping the Liverpool Football Club Foundation and our group Red Neighbors. She's a yoga teacher. And to this day, she still does chair yoga with senior citizens to combat social isolation. So she still serves the club to this day via Zoom. But when we go to Liverpool, she will do sessions with her yogis, and she is fondly remembered there. So, and we still together do a lot of work, as we've just done recently, in the city for Clatterbridge Cancer Hospital, Alderhay Children's Hospital, where my mum was a nurse after World War II, and give back to the city that gave so much to me.
I think fan supporting food banks is close to your heart as well.
Very, very dear to our hearts, and still is. And I remember going the first game in 2017 and seeing their van, their truck, and going, that thing's not going to make it back to the food bank. And we founded the Peter Moore Foundation, we funded it, and we bought him a brand new van, which is still going to this day. I'm happy to report. And it's one of those things that we spend a lot of time and effort focusing our personal savings and our time and effort to complement and add to what the LFC Foundation and Red Neighbors were doing. And we still do to this day. We go over for events. We in particular, Clatterbridge Cancer. Cancer is so prevalent in Liverpool, whether it's lifestyle or whatever it is. But the new hospital, we sponsored and funded a ward there for cancer patients. And there are numerous things that we've done there. But fan supporting food banks in particular, getting this match going ritual of going to Tesco's or Sainsbury's and get a bag of groceries and drop them off and have a chat with Ian Byrne and Dave Kelly, Liverpool and Everton fans, respectively. It's a wonderful part of the city, and really could only get going. It's everywhere now. Every major Premier League club has a kind of food bank drop-off point to support its citizens. But that's something that was near and dear to our hearts and still is.
Was it difficult keeping the club kind of grounded to the society while it was expanding so much commercially? It's bigger than ever, and certainly during your time, the rise was enormous.
Yeah, you never forget the people that got you where you're at. And it's a big commercial business now, but it serves still, I like to think, the people. It's difficult to get a ticket if you're not a season ticket holder, as I'm sure you know, and that's why it's good to be part of an OLSC, because you do get access to a handful of tickets every year. But it's still very important to the city of Liverpool, the people of Liverpool, and all of us Liverpudlians that live all over the world. But get up at godforsaken hours in the morning at 4 a.m. and watch our team play. And for that 90 minutes, we're transported back to Liverpool and everything that's going on there. So, yeah.
Did you wish you could stay there for longer than those 3 years?
But yeah, but my contract was up. I wish I'd been there longer. And but we came back, and I wish a lot of things. We all wish a lot of things, but club's in great hands. My successor, Billy Hogan, is great. He's exactly what FSG needed after me, and the club continues to go from strength to strength.
I think you're right as well. Even though you had your differences during your time with your tweeting and other stuff, you met a lot of Premier League owners. You're right, and you think Liverpool have the best one.
Look, they're true sports owners. They learn so much with Major League Baseball about data science and managing, a pretty volatile fan base in Boston Red Sox. I lived in Boston. I'm a Red Sox fan. I love baseball. I don't watch it as much as I should do anymore because I've got so much other stuff that I need to do. But they learn so much, unlike a lot of American owners who invest but are not necessarily sports investors. Now, having said that, you look at Arsenal with Stan Kroenke. He's a sports team investor here in America. You look at Todd Bowley, in one of the owners of the Los Angeles Dodgers. So from that perspective, but they're a great group. We had our differences. I don't know how they perceive me retrospectively, but oh well, I gave it my best. And we're in good hands. Having met a lot of owners that have come and gone, we're in great hands. And I'm not going to call out clubs or owners, but there are clubs that wish they had an ownership group that is now in its 16th year with the club, that truly believes in investing in the club, doesn't take any money out of the club. I can verify that, and has helped think through the future as regards the new main stand, which was just opening when I arrived, and then most recently Anfield Road expansion. So the new training center, the AXA Training Center in Kirby, the retail stores that have opened up all around the world to take advantage of that global pulse. And so we have an ownership group that really gets it, is deeply embedded in the culture of the club, and they understand it after all these years now. And, like I say, doesn't take any money out. I mean, they're going to do just fine as and when the club is sold. The valuations, the multiplier on what they paid. Remember, we were heading to administration with the previous American owners, Hicks and Gillette. And they came in and bought the club to their credit and got a really good price. And, you leverage that in your exit as to when that ever happens to be. But you can see the valuations of Liverpool now versus the £267 million or whatever it was they paid to get it away from Hicks and Gillette.
I think it's 14 times bigger now. What are you most proud of during your years working for the club?
I just think helping the club get back to its fan base in a way that's meaningful, that shows we care, that we understand them. Look, there's not a day goes by where there isn't some drama of some sort. But you've got to plow through that every single day. And you've got to always keep your eye on the North Star, which is success on the field, which is what you need to do. Every single day, there was some level of drama of something, and you're also part of a Premier League that's evolving, and you've got to be part of this ownership group of 20 clubs each season. And that was a lot of the time you have to spend of continuing to grow the league as by far the best sports league in the world. And, as I sit here, the NFL might argue with me, but I don't see many. I'm a huge NFL fan, and I don't see many NFL games being broadcast in 200 countries. I mean, it's Premier League is amazing. and what they've done is amazing. And I was fortunate in my EA Sports days to work with Richard Masters, who's the CEO now, in his previous role, and helped bring through, I think, with our FIFA game, the game formerly known as FIFA, the Premier League all around the world, and people getting to understand what the Premier League was about, its clubs, its players. It's the best football in the world. I think back in my EA days with a little bit of pride as well of what we were able to achieve. But at Liverpool, as I said, I just like to think that I brought the club and the fan base back together again, a little closer. And can you put a monetary value on that immediately? No, but over a lifetime, LTV as we call it in games, lifetime value, it's huge, and it just separates us from other clubs. There's no doubt in my mind. There's a separation. There's Liverpool, and this means more because it does to us for so many reasons. And then there's a bunch of other clubs who are great clubs, but not Liverpool. And that's what you have to sit back and think about when we're losing, when we're having difficult times, when we've got injuries. I said something the other week, we're immune to winning and losing. And by that, I mean, look, every club goes through bad times, and so, but I don't think you're losing not a club like Liverpool. You don't walk away because you're on a difficult losing streak. And so it's multi-generational. It was my dad, it was my granddad, and that goes back nearly 100 years now. And so you have those roots with your family and the community. And so I look back and I smile and I sit here just as a fan nowadays and screaming at the television and jumping up and down and, muttering under my breath what should happen in any given minute, just like any other fan. And I look back at pride and, I can't judge. I can't control what people think of me when I was there, but all they need to know is I gave my everything. And I like to think that the success we had on the pitch was matched by the success we were having off the pitch. And when I left, I think the club was in a great position.
I could speak to you for hours about this, but I guess we're going to cut it off there. But thank you so much for speaking to us. And luckily, you've written a book, so if people are interested, they should go and buy that and read it.
Yeah,
because,
book's called Game Changer. I should plug it. And I don't know whether you get it from Amazon in Norway or whether you can get it Amazon UK shipped or whatever. I don't know. Since Brexit, I have no idea how all of that works. But and it's on audio on Spotify, which may be easier. But I am proud of my life. It's very personal in there. You realize I'm not perfect, like pretty much all of us. And so, but I like to think that I gave everything and the club was in a better place when I left. Yeah, and just one final shout out, Jens, to all of the Norwegian fans that I met. So many fans coming over, and as I walked around before a game, would stop and chat, and there was so many from obviously coming in from Oslo for the most part, and for game day and staying over and having a great time in the city, and it's kind of the lifeblood of our club to have that global pulse for. In particular Scandinavia, and I know the roots of the Premier League being shown in the early days on Scandinavian television, and we were lucky to be, on even the first division before it was the Premier League, lucky to be the club, and I think that multi-generational element of it plays out well in Scandinavia as well. So we're blessed to have this support.
That's good to hear, I think, for a lot of people over here. So. Again, really, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And
okay. Thanks, Jens.